Welcome back everyone to the Try Podcast. I'm your host, the Triple S of House Shepherd, and in this episode we will be analysing the 10th and final episode of the first season of House of the Dragon, The Black Queen. I'll be going through what I like and dislike about the episode, how it compares to the source material, and also bring up anything I find interesting or noteworthy enough to mention. There might be spoilers for future episodes and other media related to the A Song of Ice and Fire series as well, so you've been warned, and keep in mind with this being a podcast it will be more of an audible rather than a visual experience. With all that said, let's begin. Number 1, and right off the bat, Rhaenys says the reason she didn't incinerate Alicent, Aegon the Elder, and all the others at the end of the last episode was because the war to probably come wasn't for her to start. Thinking about it, this does actually make some sense in that she didn't want to be the one to force everyone into fighting immediately without both sides first seeing if things can be resolved without bloodshed, which they in fact strive to do throughout this episode with their restraint, proposals, and intimidation by being the one to gather the most allies. Because despite the many deaths in the Dragon Pit caused by Rhaenys and Melea's escape, the Greens and the Blacks are still not yet at full-on, all-out, kill-on-sight war. I mean, why would Rhaenyra and Aegon risk the lives of their family members and of their dragons to turn this cold war into a war of fire and blood just because a few unwashed, unimportant, powerless peasants died, you know? That makes no sense. Though I still think Rhaenys could have burned them all and just flown to Essos, I guess she'd probably be easy to find if she didn't ditch Melees somewhere, and also the houses she'd killed members of on the days, Hightower, Lannister, etc., might still blame the Blacks for the murders and go to war anyway, even if the Blacks disavowed Rhaenys in her actions. Number 2, I think it's neat we see flashes of Syrax roaring her head off as Rhaenyra goes through the painful procedure of pushing out her baby, reminds us of the somewhat psychic link dragons have with their riders, like when we saw Caraxes react when Daemon was hit by a flaming arrow in episode 3. Number 3, Rhaenyra screams get out as she's giving birth just as she does in Fire and Blood, but she doesn't curse her baby for a monster. The baby girl does seem to be deformed in some manner, though we never see much of her to determine whether the dwarf court jester Mushroom was exaggerating or not, with him describing her as having a hole in her chest where her heart should have been and a stubby, scaled tail. We also never hear in the show that the baby was to be named Visenya, presumably after Aegon the Conqueror's sister wife Visenya, nor how Rhaenyra blamed her daughter's death on that of the Green stealing her crown and her vowing to make them pay for it all. Number 4. So it's Eric in the show who steals Viserys' crown from the Red Keeper and brings it to Rhaenyra, rather than a defecting Sir Steffon Darkling of the Kingsguard like in Fire and Blood. Steffon and Lawrence Marbrand are already on Dragonstone, and now with the addition of Eric, that means Aegon the Elder has Criston Cole, Aric Cargill, Rickard Thorne and Willis Fell left from his father Viserys' Kingsguard. No mention is made of what has happened to Harold Westerling, whether he's been arrested, executed or shaved his beard, changed his name and gone off to live peacefully away from the war. I really did think he would appear on Dragonstone having pledged himself anew to Rhaenyra, giving her and Aegon 4 Kingsguard apiece, meaning they both only had to find 3 new members. Number 5. The painted table looks quite a bit different than how it did in Game of Thrones and how it is described in the books, the main difference being that the painted table in House of the Dragon isn't even painted, it's carved, so it should be called the carved table. All the symbols like the trees and the castles and all the names have been carved into the wood so that candles placed underneath illuminate what appears to be exposed solidified tree sap, and it makes me wonder, would Aegon the Conqueror have had the names carved in the common tongue? Wouldn't he have had them translated into his own tongue, High Valyrian? Also, what if they needed to update the table? It wouldn't be a problem if the names of places changed because if they're just painted on, you could easily repaint it, but with them being carved, the map becomes pretty useless without constantly having to remember, oh yeah, that place isn't called that anymore. In any case, the table lighting up is a cool visual. Number 6, Rhaenyra hesitating before taking the wine from Rhaena. Do you think she was like, wait a minute, could be poison? Wait, it's Rhaena, so probably not, though maybe someone poisoned it before she poured it. Best take it or I might offend her, but I won't drink any of it just to be safe. Number 7, I like Rhaenys' reaction when Daemon includes her dragon in his count of how many they have to face the Greens with, like, don't include me without my permission, bitch. Number 8, Rhaenyra says none of their dragons have been to war, but she's forgetting Daemon's dragon has been to war, the war for the Stepstones, as has Seasmoke, who's still chilling on Driftmark. Daemon probably calls Seasmoke an unclaimed dragon to keep up the ruse that Laenor is dead. Good luck to anyone trying to claim Seasmoke though, because a dragon and a rider's bond is for life, so Seasmoke should by all rights not allow anyone to climb on his back, unless the show changes that. Vermithor and Silverwing are also mentioned as still being unclaimed, with him previously being King Jaehaerys Targaryen I and his wife Queen Alicent's dragons respectively. Number 9, Daemon first says the Greens have 3 adult dragons, and later says the Greens have a total of 4 dragons. Aegon the Elder has Sunfire, Aemond has Vhagar, Helena has Dreamfire, who used to belong to Rhaena Targaryen, sister of King Jaehaerys Targaryen I and wife to King Maegor Targaryen I, and Daeron has Dessarion, the Blue Queen. The one dragon that isn't yet an adult must be Dessarion, since she's the youngest of the Green's dragons, though being the youngest doesn't mean Dessarion isn't able to fight Daemon, so don't count her out. Oh wait, you said 4, so I guess you didn't. Number 10. In Fire and Blood, Daemon is a lot less bloodthirsty than he is in the show. In Fire and Blood, it's actually Rhaenys who points out the numerical draconic superiority the Blacks have over the Greens, and who urges Rhaenyra to exploit it, but both Rhaenyra and Daemon argue against using dragons. They don't want to burn down the very city they intend to rule, a lesson Mad Queen Daenerys didn't learn, and they don't want to send themselves and all their kids, save Rhaena who ain't got no dragon, into battle against other dragons because, they could all get killed. We must fight this war with words before we go to battle, the prince declared. Number 11. Hang on, did Eric say the galleon's flying a banner of a 3-headed green dragon? I know Aegon the Elder's side is known as the Greens, but his sigil is that of a 3-headed gold dragon because his dragon Sunfire is gold, like on the banner above the dais at his coronation in the previous episode. If the Greens are going to use a green dragon on their banners, then shouldn't the Blacks actually be called the Reds since they use a red dragon on their banners? I wonder if that was actually a discussion the showmakers had to maybe change the Blacks to the Reds because of political correctness. Number 12. Daemon's really pushing his luck at giving out orders and throwing out ideas without the permission of Rhaenyra. In fact, just like she did back in episode 2 when she told her dad he should send his dragon riders to the Stepstones as a show of force. Number 13. Speaking of episode 2, Daemon and Otto face each other on the bridge to Dragonstone yet again, and though Rhaenyra and Syrax land on Otto's side, she ain't coming to Otto's aid this time. This was a power move to block off the Greens' escape and for Rhaenyra to barge her way through them, daring them to do something before facing Otto down. Number 14. In Fire and Blood, Aegon the Elder didn't want to try and talk things out with his sister. He wanted her dead, but it was his mother and his wife who convinced him to send a messenger to speak with his sister. Though it wasn't Otto they sent to talk, it was Grand Maester Orwyll. And rather than Rhaenyra taking off Otto's hand badge, in Fire and Blood she had Orwyll's maester chain pulled off from around his neck and she gave it to her own maester, Gerardis, declaring him Grand Maester for his loyalty and not engaging in doublethink as Orwyll does, agreeing Viserys named Rhaenyra his lawful heir, but then serving a pretender king. Number 15. Remember in episode 1 when Rhaenyra ripped a page out of the book Alicent was quizzing her on at the Heart Tree? Number 16. I guess the singer Lucian of Tarth was just using his imagination when he composed the ballad Farewell My Brother, a song which tells the tale that as the Greens were leaving Dragonstone, Eric and Arik tried to convince each other to switch sides, but to no avail. Fire and Blood states none of the sources used in the writing of the book mentioned this meeting of the brothers, and with it not appearing in the show, this event could just be entirely fictional. Number 17. So this entire time Rhaenyra has just assumed Viserys told Daemon about Aegon's prophecy of the Song of Ice and Fire, and that in the many years she's been with him, this is the first time she's ever brought it up. Number 18. I'm not surprised Daemon's capable of strangling his wife since, he smashed a previous wife's head in with a rock when she was paralysed. What he says does make sense though. Viserys did put a lot of stock in his and others' dreams, like choosing to try and save his baby son over his wife just because of his dream of placing his son upon the Iron Throne wearing Aegon the Conqueror's crown. Which, now that I think about it, I guess that kinda did happen in the last episode. It's Viserys' fault Aegon the Elder ended up being crowned. He put his son on the throne wearing the Conqueror's crown, so his dream did come true. Number 19. So with Rhaenys not kneeling to Rhaenyra when she was crowned, nor curtsying when she enters a room, you think she would actually agree with Corlys about Driftmark not taking sides and leaving Rhaenyra, the person she believes had her son slain or murdered, to face the Greens without House Velaryon. But then it turns out she was just waiting for Corlys to be well enough to be convinced to support the Blacks, and so he then can announce their house and fleet will fight for Rhaenyra. It's just like how she felt it wasn't her place to start the war. She didn't feel it was her place to make the decision whether to stay neutral or not. It was her husband's. She just threw in her opinion on the matter which Corlys could have accepted or rejected. Number 20. Again, just like I mentioned in point number 12, we have another callback to when Rhaenyra was openly voicing her opinion that her father should send his dragon riders as a show of force. This time though, it's Rhaenyra's son Jace suggesting that his mother should send him and his brother on their dragons, though not so much as a show of force but rather as a show of intimidation.
Send us. Send us.
Number 21. So the dragon Daemon pays a visit and sings to is apparently the Bronze Fury of Vermithor, King Jaehaerys I's old dragon, who hasn't been ridden by anyone since the old king's death about 30 years ago. Imagine, You've been chilling on Dragonstone, coiled up with your bay Silverwing for 30 years, and now here comes this little human singing a lullaby and wanting you, the Bronze Fury, and your girlfriend to let new humans fly you both into fights with other dragons. The audacity. Number 22, though it is cool when Luke and Arax land at Storm's End to see Vhagar rise up in the background, did Luke really not notice Vhagar hanging out just outside the walls? I mean, she's right there, and it doesn't matter if it's foggy, if us viewers can see her, then Luke should have been able to as well. Number 23, though Aemond does his best Daemon impression for most of this scene by not saying a whole lot, in Fire and Blood he's a lot more vocal as soon as Luke walks through the door, constantly calling him a strong, asking him if he was wet from the rain or from piss, and calling Rhaenyra the whore of Dragonstone. Even Boros ends up calling her a bitch. Number 24, oh sweet, they actually included in the show Aemond replacing his eye with a sapphire. I guess show Aemond doesn't like showing it off all that much, so he constantly wears his eye patch to cover it. Show Aemond isn't like Tywin Lannister in The Last Action Hero, but book Aemond is, only wearing the eye patch when he didn't want to freak out people with his scar and such. Any other time though, he walks around with his sapphire on display for all to see. Number 25, as well as getting to meet Boromund Baratheon's son Boros, we also get to see Boros' daughters, Cassandra, Maris, Ellen and Floris, also known as the Four Storms. Fire and Blood states no one knows which daughter Aemond decided to marry, though the book states for a certainty it wasn't Maris, the clever one. That's because Maris, angry at not being chosen by Aemond, mocks him, asking if it was actually a testicle Luke took from him rather than an eye, and that she was glad he didn't choose her because she wants a husband with all of his family jewels. Number 26, when Luke and Arax fly through the storm, did anyone else have flashbacks to Harry Potter flying through the storm whilst playing Quidditch in The Prisoner of Azkaban? No one? Just me? Well, what about when Luke and Arax fly above the clouds into a sunny sky? Did anyone else have flashbacks to Neo and Trinity flying above the clouds into a sunny sky in The Matrix Revolutions? Just me again? Seriously? Number 27, so both Luke and Aemond lose control of their dragons, Arax goes crazy and burns Vhagar's face without Luke telling him to, and then Vhagar munches down on Luke and Arax without Aemond telling her to. You can see on Aemond's face he never actually intended to kill Luke, just scare him, but Luke and Arax are dead by the jaws of Vhagar, who is being flown by Aemond, and the War of Fire and Blood, the Targaryen Civil War, the dying of the dragons has now been well and truly started by them. Number 28, I like the conspiracy theories mentioning Fire and Blood concerning Luke's death. Mushroom claims Aemond found Luke's body, scooped out his eyes and presented them to Maris. Some say Luke was swallowed whole by Vhagar, and others say he fell off Arax into the ocean, survived, but also lost his memories, and then lived the rest of his life as a fisherman. Number 29, though Rhaenyra in the show doesn't collapse when she hears about Luke's death like she does in Fire and Blood, she does turn and look into the camera, just as she did at the end of episode 1. At the end of episode 1, she was beginning her new life as Viserys' heir, and at the end of this episode, she's beginning her new life as a queen in wartime. So, those were all my thoughts on the 10th and final episode of the first season of House of the Dragon, the Black Queen. If you think I missed anything important or interesting, put it in a comment below, along with your own thoughts on the episode. My most liked part of the episode goes to the show actually showing Aemond's sapphire eye. They could have easily just not included it and had Aemond constantly wear his eye patch, saving money on the makeup and effects, so I appreciate its inclusion in the show. And my most disliked part of the episode goes to not seeing a farewell between Eric and Arik, with them failing to convince each other to switch sides, and then either ending up declaring eternal brotherly love, or unending hate towards each other. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any advice on what I could do better for the next video, please leave it in a comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video, and follow me on Twitter at @SSS_YouTube. I'm also on Odyssey at @SSS:83, so follow me on there if that's where you prefer to watch videos. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you all again next time. Goodbye.